Take a look around your desk right now, or maybe somewhere in your house. Are you surrounded by clutter? Have you ever stopped to think that maybe that clutter is a sign of why you're being held back in other areas of your life? You see, physical clutter isn't about disorganization or some kind of a bad habit, it's about the decisions that you never made. Today, I'm talking with the woman who started an entire industry with just a $7 ad back in 1978. She's known as the Paper Tiger Lady, and she has helped millions rethink productivity. Her biggest insight isn't about closets or file drawers, it's about the decisions you never make. Barbara Hemphill helps people cut through chaos, reclaim time, and finally focus on what matters. If you've ever wondered why things just don't stick, this episode will change how you think about your stuff and your life. Let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to Hero Up, the podcast that inspires and challenges you to step up and become heroic in all areas of your life. I'm your host, Tony Stark Policci, and it's my goal to give you practical, actionable advice and insights into copywriting, mindset, lifestyle, and impact. On this show, we'll explore how to create compelling and persuasive marketing messages, and I'll give you clever tips to make you stand out as a hero. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a coach, or a creative, this podcast is for you. So, let's dive in. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Hero Up podcast. You just heard the introduction to my phenomenal guest, Barbara Hemphill. Barbara, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Tony. I love to share what I've learned, and I thank you for the invitation.
You know, the first question I want to ask you is just I've got an idea of who you are, but who would you say you are? Who are you and what do you do?
Help people accomplish their work and enjoy their lives so that they can be all God created them to be and do.
That is amazing. Recently, at the time of this interview, you've had something really amazing happen with this article in the New Yorker. But let's talk about how you started. You started your business with a $7 ad in a New York City newspaper in 1978.
Right.
So, what was the most challenging aspect of those early days? What prompted this?
Well, what prompted it was I had three adopted children, one with special needs. I wanted them to be first in my life. My husband worked for a nonprofit and didn't make enough money to live for living expenses in New York. So I was like, okay, I need to add to the income, but I want my kids to be first. And the only way I could figure out to do that would be to find a problem in the world that I could solve that people would do it on my time. And so I sat on the playground and listened to people talking and heard a lot of conversations about clutter and disorganization. And so I ran a $7 ad that said disorganized. I organized closets, paper, files, kitchens, you name it, call Barbara Hemphill. And that's what started this whole thing. I only was in New York less than a year. We moved to Washington, D.C., and I went to the Small Business Administration to ask them to help me launch this business. And they laughed me out of the room and said, "This is not a viable business. Nobody pays for organizing closets, cupboards, and kitchens." And today it's like an $11.7 billion industry. But the interesting thing for me, and the reason I'm still doing this after 46 years, is that we can also, clutter is a problem not only in homes, but in offices and businesses. And that area is where residential organizing was 40 years ago. Most businesses have no idea the profitability and productivity impact that clutter is causing on their business.
Yeah, you know, that makes an awful lot of sense. And I want to get back to that, but I want to focus on the fact that you really are the one responsible for launching this entire industry. And this is something that is mentioned in this article from December 2024 in the New Yorker. Did you have any idea what you were doing
Oh,
when
heavens
it
no.
launched back then?
Oh, I charged $10 an hour and lived in horror that somebody would ask me what made me think I was worth $10 an hour. I just didn't, I was just trying to provide value for people. There were at the same time I started, there were some people in California that were beginning to do the same thing, and I reached out to them, but back then there was no technology, there wasn't any Zoom, there wasn't any way that we could collaborate, so we were kind of in parallel structures, but what launched me was I quickly learned that the number one organizing problem was paper. And people would ask me, "How long do you keep?" And in those days, it was bank statements because we used to get our canceled checks wrapped up in bank statements in big, thick envelopes, and you'd go into people's houses, and they would be in boxes in the garage and under the bed and in the attic. And then people would say, "How long do you keep those?" And then they'd say, "Well, how long do you keep real estate records? And how long do you keep medical records? And how long do you," and I didn't have a clue, but I thought, "Well, there must be a book in the library." And I went to the library and there wasn't. And I thought, "Now this is amazing because it doesn't matter how much money they were making, whether it was 18,000 or $800,000 a year, they still needed to know the answer to that question." So in 1988, I wrote a book called Taming the Paper Tiger, and it ultimately became a bestseller. I became known as the Paper Tiger Lady, and that's kind of what and then because of that best-selling book, I got to be on Good Morning America and the Today Show and CNN and places like that, which is what really launched the industry because it made the public aware of it, because the public had no idea that you could have somebody come and organize your files. And so in 1979, the Washingtonian magazine did a story that had my picture of me sitting on a filing cabinet. And it said, "For $10 an hour, you can have Barbara Hemphill come to your home and organize your files."
$10 an hour. Wow. It's just crazy. I remember it was in the early '90s when, I discovered you through, my brother Joe Polish, and that definitely I mean, I still use the Paper Tiger digital online system, there's a cabinet right next to me that's all
Yeah.
organized because of your system.
Well, it's what we
So
call one of our proprietary things is what we call the finding system as opposed to the filing system, because when you're filing paper, you can file it anywhere, but the question is, how do you find it?
right.
And so we call it the productive environment filing system. And then we moved into digital and actually renamed the company because the company was called the Paper Tiger Institute. But as we began to move into the digital world, I didn't want people to think that I was old fashioned, that I didn't understand digital. And so then the company was renamed Productive Environment Institute so that we could deal with both.
Smart, smart. So, Barbara, you said something at the very beginning here that is really crucial for anyone listening. So, a lot of my listeners are they're solopreneurs or entrepreneurs. Many are successful in business, but one of the crucial things to being successful in any venture is what kind of value are you bringing to the world? What problems are you solving? What desires are you meeting for people? And you said that you sat in a park and just listened to what people were complaining about, and you
Yep.
found this need, and that's what you started. But and so that's something we all need to pay attention to. What do our audiences want? What is it where is there a need that I can solve? Did you have experiences in your early life that gave you this passion for organization and productivity?
Well, it was role modeled for me and my family. I grew up in the second floor of a tenant farmhouse in Nebraska. My parents were quite poor. I didn't know it then, but they were. And, but my father was a farmer. Well, when you're a farmer, you have to be organized. It was a dairy farm, and if you're
Yeah.
gonna the cows are gonna give milk and you're gonna have crops, soybeans and corn, you have to have systems. So I grew up around that. And my mother, was the assistant to a bank president, and she managed the farms that the bank was in charge of, and she was very, very organized. So in our household, although it wasn't always terribly neat because we had a very small space, we lived in the second floor and there were 4 of us and we only had 3 rooms, but if the phone rang and the pastor was gonna come to our house, it didn't take long to get things in the right place
Hmm.
They weren't stuffed somewhere, and I can still remember my mother saying, "If you're going upstairs, take something with you." I mean, she role modeled it. And one of the things I observed, and by the way, what shocks people is I am not naturally organized by any stretch of the imagination. I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I love to start things. I don't like to finish them. I love the big picture and I despise details. So my daughter teases me all the time. She'll say, "Mom, how do you make such a big mess in such a short period of time?" And I do, because that's who I am. So the systems that I've created were created for me. If I didn't have my own systems, I don't know where I would. And am I perfect? Absolutely. I'm not perfect at all. I may, in fact, I just made a mistake because you and I rescheduled our recording, and I kind of got discombobulated, and I missed another appointment because I just,
Yeah.
something happened. My ADHD brain just went, and that's life. So one of the things we talk about all the time, what is organized? And we say there's 4 questions. One is, does it work? Whatever it is that you're doing, does it work? 2 is, do you like it? Because if you don't like it, you're not gonna sustain it. So it might work for a period of time, but, whether it's physical exercise or how you organize your email or whatever it is. Third is, does it affect the people does it work for the people it affects? So that's your family and your colleagues. If you're an employee in a company, the information you're managing doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the company. And it's your responsibility to organize it in such a way that if something happens that you don't go to work tomorrow, somebody else can find it. But the fourth question relates to what we're talking about now is, can you recover quickly? We make mistakes. I make plenty of mistakes. But when you have systems in place, and I use the acronym of systems of saving you space, time, energy, and money. Anytime there's something you need to do repeatedly, whether it is file your taxes or launch a new marketing campaign, you need to have a system. And if you don't, and when it comes to clearing clutter, so my business has been based on 4 words. Clutter is postponed decisions. However, as my business partner, Andrea Anderson, pointed out after we started working together, she said, "Barbara, it's not enough to make the decision. You have to have a way to implement the decision. That's the system."
Well, 2 things stand out to me after what you just said. Number 1, this is probably why I like working with your system so well, is because I'm incredibly ADHD. I'm super messy. Like, if you could look over this is the stack of stuff here on my desk that I have to go through from this week. It's Friday, okay? And those are definitely delayed decisions.
Postpone decisions. They are
Postponed decisions,
postpone
postponed.
decisions, clutter, and I just I the reason I corrected you is because I wanted to bring up something else. With If you look on Google and you search "clutter as postponed decisions," which is my registered trademark, when
Okay.
people when they quote it, they add an adverb, and they will say clutter is merely postponed decisions, or simply postponed decisions, or only postponed decisions. Well, if you struggle making decisions, because I do, I mean, that's why I created these, because I'm a procrastinator and I'm a perfectionist. And so I postpone decisions. And if you have difficulty doing that, and then somebody says to you, "Well, Tony, clutter's just postponed decisions." How do you feel? It's like they dismiss that this
Yeah,
is
it's like they minimized it.
they minimized it. And that's exactly what happens. And we have a certification program for people to be trained to what we do. And they come from 2 genres, basically. There's the people who were born organized, they just were born that way. And then we have the people who were like me, who are not naturally organized but developed the systems. And so we have to match people with the right people, because sometimes the ones who were born organized don't work very well with the ones that really struggle with it. And so it's all about the art of organizing and matching the right people with the right person, with the right group.
Now, that's brilliant. The thing that you said, is your business partner Andrea?
Andrea
Andrea.
Anderson.
And so Andrea said to you, it's not just about the decisions, it's about the implementation of the
Right.
systems?
And talk a little bit about that. How does one get from, one point to the next?
Well, let
To
me illustrate it in a very simple way. Let's pick up a piece of paper. I have a piece of paper. I mean, we all, and theoretically, this is the paperless world. Well, I haven't seen it to be paperless in very many places.
Not
And
me.
even the individuals and the companies that have gone paperless haven't dealt with the paper before they went paperless. So that's still the clutter. But here's the interesting and very my passion is simplicity. My word for 25 is subtract.
Mm,
In our society, we're always trying to solve things by adding something, when in fact, all that does is create more problems. So here's the simple thing that I learned very early in organizing paper in people's houses. There's only three decisions you can make about any piece of paper. File, which means there's nothing I need to do with it right now, but I don't have the guts to throw it away. So I'm putting it in a reference file. Or I need to act on it. This is a bill I need to pay. This is a phone call I need to make, a form I need to fill out, a conversation I need to have. That's an action file. And then toss, recycle, shred is I don't need it. You would be amazed how people struggle just making that decision. We do these boot camps where they're live. So we have people in groups sitting on Zoom with their piles of paper, and we say, this is your first, take that pile like you just had right there, Tony. And we'll say, okay, put that pile in front of you. You're going to have three piles: file, act, and if your wastebasket going to recycle isn't there, toss. You would be amazed at how much people struggle with that. Now, where the act and reference came from was when I was in people's homes. I would go in and they say they'd have a stack of papers this high for a particular project. This is I'm on the board of the homeowners association, and this is all the information. But I'm on the board, so I have to be responsible. That's
right.
one of the big causes of clutter is over responsibility.
Hmm,
Or this is a book I'm writing on, and I quickly so this isn't manageable. And so then take the homeowners as an example. It's like, well, yeah, maybe you need to keep all that, but it doesn't need to be on your desk. So I thought, okay, we can make this by saying, what is the small percentage of papers for the homeowners association that you need right now? It may only be the current newsletter and the agenda for the board meeting that you're going to at the end of the month. And the rest of it is reference. So at that point, I immediately started teaching people divide your paper into action and reference. And here's the interesting thing, Tony. The same thing applies to digital. All of the decision making that we teach relates to both. So the
hmm.
question becomes, why do people have so much trouble making decisions? And in my experience, it always comes down to emotion. Usually fear of making a mistake, fear of wanting it back, fear of forgetting, fear of offending someone, fear of not being responsible, fear of missing out on something. That fear. And this goes even deeper. Is like, okay, why do people have so many fears? Well, one of the things I've learned is that when I worked with people who just couldn't let go of things. I had a client in Atlanta, it's been probably 30 years ago now, who owned a marketing agency. We used our proprietary finding system to organize all of her files. I was there for days. She had 35,000 files,
My
an
god.
entire room of files, and two full-time people that managed it. Why? Because of her emotion. And what I've learned through the years is that when people are afraid to let go, when they have extreme difficulty letting go, if I ask enough questions, I will always find that they have had a severe emotional loss in their life. I was autographing Taming the Paper Tiger at Barnes& and Noble in New York City. And I think this was in 92, somewhere around there. And I told that story. And a young man walked up to me And he said, "My apartment is so full of clutter, I haven't had anybody in it for months." And he
Oh.
said, "I come home from work at night and I say, okay, tonight is the night I'm going to clean it up." And he said, "The flat surface I have is my bed." And he said, "I literally start sorting the papers on my bed." And he said, "When I try to decide, I become physically paralyzed. And there are nights when I shove the papers aside and literally crawl into bed with my paper." And he looked at me and said, "My mother died when I was 6. Are you telling me I have to deal with the grief of losing my mother before I can control my paper?" I said, "I'm not a mental health professional. I can't answer that. But I can tell you from what I've seen that if you find someone you trust, most likely not a family member, but if you find someone who trust who can help you decide what you need and want to keep, because there is no right or wrong to it. We have what we call the cost factor, which is you can keep anything you want if you're willing to pay the price.
Mm.
And the price is time, space, money, and energy. So when we're working with clients, we're not saying you should or shouldn't keep this. We're asking them, is this a price you're willing to pay? If you choose to keep it, this is the price you're willing to pay. And in the case of the client that I mentioned in Atlanta, she was willing to pay it. I had another lawyer in Washington, D.C., who had inherited millions of dollars from his mother, and he didn't have to work, but he was terrified that the money was going to be mismanaged. And he walked into his house, and it was like a maze of financial journals and things because he wanted to make sure that the financial advisors were giving him the right advice. I mean, it was, that's the emotional thing. Well, anyway, I told that story. I was speaking to a group of executive women at a university, and I told that story, and this woman walked up to me and she said, "You just saved my marriage." I said, "Wow, that's pretty dramatic. Do you mind elaborating?" And she said, "I came to this conference with the intention of telling my husband, to whom I've been married for 13 years, that I was leaving because he's a pack rat and I have allergies and I can't keep the house clean." And she stopped, and then the tears started to come down her face. And she said,
Mm.
"I never realized until I heard you talk that it wasn't that he wouldn't let go, but that he couldn't. His mother died when he was 7." So I said, "May I make a suggestion?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Go home and say something to the effect of, 'I never understood before how important all this is to you. Let's figure out how you can keep it and we can still live together.'" I followed up with them for 8 months, and that changed the dynamic because in most relationships, what's happens, God has a sense of humor. Most of them are
Yeah.
married to somebody different than we are. When I first got married to my husband, I've been married 38 years. We were first married. I thought it was going to be the death of my organizing industry because he was incredibly disorganized. He was a colonel in the army. So I thought, oh my gosh, he'd be organized. Well, he had privates that organized him. And it's like, oh my gosh, I thought this is going to be the death of my business. And then I thought, wait a minute, he's not my client. I
Mm.
mean, one of the things we know as entrepreneurs is you don't try to sell your stuff to people who don't want it. You're looking for
Right.
people who do want it. And so, at any rate, I was said to this to the woman, I said, "Tell your husband that." And then I stayed in touch with him for about 8 months. The dynamics completely changed. Once she said to him, "I understand that this is important to you. Let's keep it." Then he began to say things like, "Well, this collection, we could take a picture of it and then we could let go of the collection," or something like that. Now, it took 13 years to accumulate it, so it doesn't go overnight.
Right.
But one of the principles that we implement that is so critical is today's mail is tomorrow's pile. So we do these two boot camps. One's called Office Transformation Boot Camp and one's called Digital Transformation Boot Camp. And it's 5 weeks. We work together twice a week, and we promise 3 things in the boot camp. The number 1, you will know what to do with every new piece of information that comes in. You're going to make a decision. We're going to teach you how to make a decision, and you're going to have a system to implement that decision. Secondly, that everything you have filed in the 5 weeks we work together, you or anyone else you want to will be able to find that information. And 3, at the end of the 5 weeks, we will create with you a productive environment game plan that says, how do you address what we didn't get to in the 5 weeks. And everybody's different. Like some people can say, okay, I now know how long it takes to do this. I'm not willing to do it. I'm going to put it in some place. I'm going to leave it there for 2 years. And if I don't need it, I'm going to pitch it. And some people say, no, I have to go through it because there's really important things in there, family, memorabilia, or financial things. So then we have to come up with a strategy for how are they going to do it? Are they going to do it in small increments over a period of time? Are they going to hire someone to help them do it? What is the way of doing it? But that's the guarantee of those boot camps. And we get the most amazing testimonials about how it's changed people's lives. And the truth is, we're going to have paper and digital information as long as we are breathing.
Right.
And one of the interesting things we've discovered about the boot camps is probably more than 50% of them, probably closer to 80%, are people who are also caregiving for their parents.
Huh.
So it was like they had all their own stuff to manage first, which was most difficult enough. Many of them are entrepreneurs. And then they get their parents' stuff on top and it pushes them over the edge. It's like, this is too much. So the reality is the older we get, the harder it is to make decisions and the harder it is to create new habits. So we say now is the time to create put the system in place and create the habits. So as the older you get, you don't have to think about it. And I have a perfect example in my own life. My husband does a lot with real estate. So there's tons of paper that comes in and he'll give it to me. File this, file this, file this, which I always
Okay.
did. For years, he would come back to me and say, I gave you such and such, and I don't remember when it was or whatever. Well, if I say, okay, I know where it is because I would remember, oh, yeah, I remember that. Now, and I'm not exaggerating, Tony, he will come to me and he'll say, I gave you such and such, and I will have zip recollection about it. I do not remember him giving it to me. I don't remember anything about it. I'll say, well, I don't remember it, but if you gave it to me, I can find it. And I'll go to our finding system, do a keyword search, and sure enough, it'll show up and I'll hand it to him. If I didn't have that system and those habits in hand, we would both be in big trouble right now. But as it is, we have a very high quality life because your ability to accomplish any task or goal is related to your ability to find what you need when you need it.
That is so true. I had an experience just a few weeks ago, which was extremely frustrating, and I've noticed the same kind of thing where I don't remember, things like I used to.
Yeah.
So I'm 61 now, and I had this really important document that I needed to locate, and I went to your finding system, and guess what? It wasn't listed anywhere, and now I'm panicking. And I this was something I had to actually go to the FBI to get another copy of. So I had just emailed them to let them know that I'd lost this. It was a fingerprint thing, um, and it was to buy a firearm. I was getting something for my son for Christmas. And as I sent the email to let them know that I had misplaced it and I needed a replacement, it's like, I don't know if it's the Holy Spirit or just my brain activated. Have you checked? And there's this obscure lockbox, digital, like, fireproof safe that I have back in the closet in my room that I never use for anything.
Oh
And I
my
went in there
gosh.
and looked, and sure enough, it's the only thing in there.
Wow.
I have no recollection of putting it in there, none whatsoever. And the amount of stress and frustration that I went through for weeks trying to think, because where I remembered putting it, it wasn't there. And I was like, "Man, uh, it was I stored this in this location because this makes sense." So for whatever reason, on a whim, I decided to put it in that fireproof
Well, you
safe.
were trying to be safe. You were actually now here, Tony, I don't know if you've thought about this, but your finding system, I have a safe deposit box which has a lot of stuff in it. It's all indexed in my finding system so that when I do the search in the finding system, it tells me what's in my safe deposit box.
Yes, I have those too, but I had nothing in this fireproof
Wow.
safe. So I didn't even like, I never go to it. And I must have just on a whim stuck it in. I don't remember, have no recollection of doing it.
Yeah, well, thank goodness you found it. My word.
Yes. But, I can really relate to what you're talking about with this ability, like, you don't have to rely on your memory. The mind is a worthy servant, but a terrible master, right?
Yeah.
And so your system eliminates all that.
And it's
Uh,
not a good use of your mind. I mean, your mind, I mean, when and that yeah, one of the things that we do is something in companies called productivity parties, which is literally an event, a one-day event where everybody clears clutter. And at first, they think it's a terrible idea and they don't want to do it. And I say, "How many of you left home with more clutter around than you prefer?" Well, most people will say yes. So I say, "Everything we're going to do today, you're going to learn because you're going to apply it at home." And then, of course, I laugh because they're usually thinking about what they're going to tell somebody else to do, go home and tell them. And so I make them raise their hand and take a pledge that they're going to listen for what they're going to do, not what somebody else has to do.
yep,
But
yep.
what's so interesting, Tony, is at the beginning of the day, people are like, "Oh, I have work to do and I don't want to do this." And as they begin to let go of this, you can see a change in their physical body, in their
Mm.
demeanor. And then they'll say, "Oh, I'm going home and clean out the attic. I'm going home and clean out the garage. Will you come home with me?" I mean, it's amazing. And we've never had that fail. I mean, we've done it with companies with 5 people up to over 400 people, and the results are phenomenal.
Wow. You know, uh, I know that you said you're not a mental health professional and you probably don't delve into this too much, but what do you do with your clients when they recognize that they've got this fear block that's the thing? Because I really identify with that. And, as you probably know, Joe and our mother died when I was 8, Joe was 4. And so I know that I have a struggle with letting go of things. And I've
Absolutely.
pushed to overcome that. When my boys, uh, when I downsized from our big house that I raised my 4 boys in, when I remarried, my wife now, we went to a house that's about one-third the size. I had so much stuff to get rid of, and praise God for her because she just took stuff and made decisions about it. And it was like I was losing limbs as she was doing it, but I kept talking to myself like, "I don't need this." Some of the stuff I haven't looked at for 10 years. Like, what do I need these jackets for and all of these things? It was so refreshing to just, what's the word? Like, this minimalist kind of style,
Right, right. Yeah.
just to get rid of all this stuff. But my question, when somebody realizes, "Oh, okay, I've got some kind of trauma or fear or event, what do I do to deal with this?" Do you have any recommendations for
Oh,
them?
it's a great question, and the answer is you need to get support. I mean, there needs to be support. So, for example, I mentioned we had these boot camps, and we found the boot camps have worked. There's 4 components to the boot camp that makes them successful. First of all is because they followed me for a while before they've joined the boot camp, they know, like, and trust me and believe that if I say they can do it, then they think they can too, right? I
Right,
mean,
right,
and that's true. I mean, if I didn't think they could do and there have been times when I've talked to somebody and said, "I just don't think this is the right thing." You have to be ready to let it to go. And the key word is, and part of the reason I'm still in business is because I learned from my clients. And I can remember maybe it's been 3 years ago now. I had a client who was a reviewer of technology for, a magazine, and so he got all this technology, keyboards and headsets and all, and it was filling out, and it was driving his wife crazy,
yeah,
and he needs to let go of it, and he was really struggling, and I said to him, in all the years I've done this, no one has ever come back and said they were sorry they do it. Now, I always tell people ahead of time, I guarantee you there will be something that you will let go of that you'll say, "Oh," and it might be a week later or it might be a decade later. You say, "Oh, I wish I had it." But you have to think of what the price was that you paid, and there's also a good chance you wouldn't have even remembered you had it or you couldn't find it. But generally people say it's, "Oh," and he stopped me in mid-sentence. He said, "Oh," he said, "I know I'm gonna feel wonderful when it's done, but I don't want to go through the emotion." So what we found in the boot camps is they need to believe they can do it. They need to have a system. You cannot clear clutter randomly. And it's easier to clear somebody else's clutter than your own. So sometimes I hire one of the people I've trained to help me because my emotion gets in the way. The third thing is then you need accountability because it's something we don't want to do. And so if you have ADHD or you're a procrastinator or you're a perfectionist, and I'm all of those,
right.
it's like if there's something I don't want to do, I'll always figure out a good reason to not to do it. So that means I have to be accountable. So with the class, there's 2 times a week that you show up and you do it. But the thing that pushed it over the edge in terms of being dramatically successful was community. There is so much shame around clutter. I'm a smart person. I've accomplished a lot. I know a lot. And still look at this. And there's an enormous amount of shame. And when they sit on that Zoom platform and they see other people who are smart and intelligent and successful struggling as well, then it's like, oh, you mean I'm not the only one? So the answer is when you want to make that decision and you can't get through it, you need help. So I do something called Vision Accelerator session. And often sometimes it's just 90 minutes of saying, okay, what are some things you're having trouble letting go of? And then I can ask questions. It's like, we say with AI is going to change the world. And the people who are successful in it are the people who ask good questions.
Right.
Well, because I have been helping people clear clutter for over 4 decades, I know the questions that need to be answered in order to get on the other side of it.
And so is this part of, what you do with the Productivity Environment Institute?
Well, the Productive Environment Institute is the
Productive environment.
yeah, Productive Environment Institute is the entity that certifies consultants to do what we do and
Oh,
then offers these boot camps. I have Barbara Hemphill LLC and I do the Vision Accelerator. And often the Vision Accelerator sends people to some of the services from PI or often to my colleagues. I'm a big believer in community. I believe one of the values of our company is together we're better. And often, when I'm talking with someone, they may need a mental health professional, or they may need someone who specializes in ADHD, or they may need a financial. One of the huge issues is people who have trouble managing their finances usually have trouble managing their information and vice versa. So often, money coaches send their clients to us, and we can send our clients to them because each one has trouble with the other one, and when we both do it together, we both rise up.
wow, it sounds like there are so many opportunities for collaboration and things are just intertwined with some of the behaviors and habits that people struggle with. What do you think is the the connection maybe between physical clutter and spiritual well-being?
Well, the paper, it isn't the paper that's the problem, it's what the paper represents.
Mm,
The paper represents your hopes, your dreams, your intentions, your fears, and so when you have to decide about it, you have to deal with that emotion, and so I believe that I know in my heart of hearts that God created every human being for this moment in history for a specific purpose. And when you know that, if you know what that is, then it's easy to pick up a piece of paper and say, does this piece of paper help me accomplish my work or enjoy my life? And if it doesn't, it's like then you need to go through the emotion of letting it go. And there is emotion. I mean, there is emotion of letting that go. And if you're not willing to get through it, you're going to be stuck.
right.
And a lot of people are stuck. Now, here's the fun part. I get people who say, I don't know what my purpose is. And when you look at the drug addiction rate, alcoholism, suicide rate right now, the number one reason for that is people's lack of purpose. When we know what we're created for, then it's so much easier to do it. But here's what I found, and I've seen this many times. People have piles everywhere and they won't do anything about any of it because there's a bunch of it they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything.
Right.
And I remember my very first client was the widow of an attorney. She was 55 years old. The attorney was a solar practitioner, died suddenly, left her with piles of paper everywhere. She didn't have any children. She didn't know what was going on. She had no clue where things were, and she was terrified. And my role was when I looked at that, it's like, okay, I simply have to organize this so I can talk to the stockbroker about this and the accountant about this, and then work with her to teach her how to make decisions so that she can move forward to accomplish her work and enjoy her life. But lots of times when people have clutter and they let go, it's like peeling the layers of an onion. Oh, I don't know what I do want, but I know this isn't it.
Mm,
I'm not sure
right.
what I want, but this is not it. This is not it. This is not it. That's clutter, right? So my definition of clutter is anything that doesn't help you accomplish your work or enjoy your life. If you know what that is, it's easy. If you don't know what it is, it's like, well, this isn't helping me. It doesn't make me feel better. I'll never forget in my early days, I had a client who had called me because she had dreams of living in a white tower and her house was full of clutter. She had 5 children. She was a pack rat. She was also brilliant. She was an artist. She was a quilter. I can't even remember what all the things she were. And so,
Okay.
but, a lot of the people that we have are extremely intelligent on genius side, very creative. And so, I mean, I had people say to me, I love too many people and too many things. That's why I have clutter. Well, that is part of the problem. So we were standing in her closet. I don't do closets anymore, but that was one of the first things I did. And I pulled something out and I held it up and I said, "How does this make you feel?" And I'll never forget the look on her face. I don't remember where she lived in Virginia, I guess. I don't remember what she did, but I remember the look on her face. And she said, "It makes me feel guilty
Ooh.
because it cost a lot of money and she wasn't wearing it." And I said, if what you have makes you feel anything negative, if it makes you feel sad, depressed, guilty, scared, you can't afford it. Life is too short. And so that's when you want to let it go. And it's so freeing to be able to do that.
Those are 2 powerful distinctions. The first one, um, I think about in business because I've often talked with clients about things that they're focusing on, and the question is, "Does this move the boat down the river?" Like, where are you taking your boat,
Yep.
in your business? Is
Yep.
this helping you? And your distinction about, is this helping me fulfill my purpose? Why I'm here?
Right.
That's so good. And then the second one is letting go of anything that doesn't have a positive emotion attached to it. Um, I imagine that maybe this woman got this article of clothing as a gift, or maybe she bought it herself, or whatever the reason was. It was this knowledge that it was so expensive that
Right.
she should really like it. She should really want it. So she's hanging on to it because of that guilt. And it makes so much sense.
Well,
We
or I
have,
think about it, I was cleaning out the files of a large association in Washington, D.C. And the way this happened was I got it. This was early in my career. I got a call that saying, we have this storage room. The employees called it the gloom and doom room.
oh boy.
And it was literally where when an employee left and nobody wanted to go through their files, they'd put it in boxes and stick it in that room.
Okay.
And they didn't have proper shelving, and so the boxes were piled on, and one day they collapsed and the fire inspector found them. And so they called me and said, "Would you clean this out?" And I said, "Well, I will, but only under one circumstance." "What's that?" I said, "That we figure out how that happened, because that shouldn't have happened in the first place." So talking with them, we decided that it was because they didn't know how to get rid of things and whatever. And so we did our first file cleanout day, which is now a productivity party.
Mm,
And I remember this is before the days of recycling. Okay. And we had these big bins, trash bins, and we were clearing out the files, and people would go by. It was just when we were beginning to talk about the environment and about saving trees. And people
okay.
go by and say, "Oh, look at all the trees." I said, "The trees are already dead. Saving it in your filing cabinet is not helping."
Right.
So that's the fear of being responsible. Or I remember one time I was working with, there was a company that hired me. They had an employee who'd been there for 22 years who was a pack rat. She was a great employee and people loved her, but her office was just a mess. And she got a new boss, and the new boss says, "I'm not putting up with this. The good news is you have Barbara Hemphill is going to come in and help you. The bad news is you have 90 days to keep it that way. And if you don't, you're losing your job." And we were going through the stuff. And one of the things we came across were photographs of her colleagues' children. Kids' school pictures are taken.
Yeah.
And so the colleague gives it to you and, okay, "Oh, that's cute." And you stick it in the drawer where the mustard packets and the business cards and stuff like that. She says,
Right.
"Oh, I can't throw those away." And I'm saying, "You're being responsible for somebody else, but irresponsible for yourself." So we prayed over them. I said, let's pray a prayer for the kids." We prayed a prayer for the kids, and then we threw them away.
Oh, that's great. So simple.
Mhm.
You know, I've gone through things in my storage shed, cleaning it out. I had a 20 by 20 when I moved out of this house, and now I've got a 5 by 10. So I significantly got rid of a lot of stuff, but I'm still periodically go in there and go through boxes of things that I'm holding on to for my children. And I've found cards like that from their friends, right? Or
Yeah.
their friends' parents, because I was friends with all the moms and dads. And I'm like, what am I holding on to this for? Why did I say that? And there must have been some kind of an emotional reason why I felt like I needed to keep
Well,
that.
you're being responsible.
Right.
And there's some like, "Oh, this is throwing they cared about me," and to throw that away, seems like in fact, I've joked that the word archives should be spelled O-U-R chives,
Oh,
because what I would see when I would work with employees in companies, I would see that an employee would get information and they would know it needed to be kept, but they weren't sure who was keeping it. And so they would keep it because they wanted to be responsible or even for another company. In fact, I remember with the same public relations company that I mentioned, they had stuff from clients like years ago. And so one of the ways, I remember early in the interview, I said one of our goals is to stop the problem.
right.
So we said, okay, let's implement, we'd work on policies and procedures. Let's implement something that the policy of the company is to keep the client's information for, I don't remember what it was, 3 years or something. But then they had a system in place so that when the 3 years came, they could reach the client and say, we have this information of yours. We've kept it for 3 years. If we don't hear from you in 90 days, we'll throw it away. Well, what happened? Because I saw examples of where somebody calls, say, "Oh, you did an ad for us 10 years ago." And then the employee would have to dig through these horrible boxes and weren't even employed. They're trying to find, wasting time. And then maybe the client did something or maybe they didn't. Well, when they started sending out those letters, it turned out to be a marketing thing because the company was saying, "Hey, we have this information of yours. We don't need it anymore. Do you want it or would you like us to throw it away?" They'd say, "Oh, we're working on this radio ad or we're working on this. Maybe you could help us." And so it actually turned out to be a way to get more clients.
That is brilliant. Yeah. So that's a good tip for anyone listening. If you've got clients that you haven't done work for 3 years or 5 years or who knows how long, you can set an arbitrary time, reach out to them with that. By the way, I've been holding on to these files I created for you back in. I'm going to
Yes,
dispose of them unless you would like them. And great
exactly. And it's
opportunity
a
to
great
re-engage.
way to build a relationship, which is what business is all about is relationships.
Absolutely. So Barbara, is there something that like stands out that's the most surprising thing people hold on to unnecessarily? Does anything stand out to you?
Well, I don't I think surprising, no, I mean, the most surprising thing I ever found one time was a snake skin under a bed,
Oh my gosh.
which the client it wasn't that the client was saving it. I guess at one point there was a snake there that lost its skin, I don't know, but that was the most shocking.
Oh wow.
The things that are the hardest for absolute sure, is the memorabilia part. Because the memorabilia part really brings up the emotion of what has my life been about, and that's what everybody does at the end. That's the hardest part. And, that's in fact, I just did a webinar saying that's the only area of my life in the information management that I haven't completely solved yet. I'm getting close to it, but I haven't done it because there's a lot of loss in my life and different things, and looking through those bring up those, and then you're wondering what to do about it. So the thing I just wanna say is that if you get the right support, there's nothing that's impossible to do, and you will not be sorry because letting go and after all, my philosophy is this world is not my home. I'm not this physical stuff is not mine. I think about the old musical Porgy and Bess.
Mm,
I got plenty of nothing and nothing's plenty for me. We as a society I went in just this week to buy a toilet seat to put on, and I looked on the wall. There was one entire aisle 4 layers deep of
Yeah.
different types of toilet seats. I said, this is ridiculous. And we are a society with too much stuff and the stress that we get from having too much stuff. So I'm still doing this after 4 decades because anybody who's ready to let go, I want to encourage them to do it so that they can really focus on the things that matter in this life, which are the relationships. And one of the questions that I ask clients and prospects is, if you left this earth tonight, what regret would you have?
Mm, wow.
The answer to that question, Tony, by my measure, is a form of clutter. It is something that is preventing you from accomplishing your work and enjoying your life. And I try to practice what I preach. I asked myself that a couple of years ago. And the answer was, there was one of my adopted children that I didn't have a bad relationship with. I just didn't have much of a relationship. We lived far apart. And I had tried to reach out, but it hadn't been very successful. And I made the comment to one of my counselors, well, I don't know what to do about it. I've done everything I know. There's nothing else to do. And he looked at me and he said, that's not true. There's something else you could do. And I thought about it, thought, okay, that was, I think, in February. I thought, if I haven't reestablished that relationship by Mother's Day, I'm getting on an airplane and showing up on her doorstep on Mother's Day.
Mm,
Before the and intention is everything, right? We
right.
define a productive environment as an intentional setting in which everyone can accomplish their work and enjoy their lives. And that intention changed things, and I'm happy to say just a couple of weeks ago, she and her brother and I spent 3 wonderful days in Orlando. So whatever that regret is that you have, it's not too late. And that's again where my Vision Accelerator program will help you come up with a program. What is that? If I left this earth tonight, what regret would I have? What is the answer to that question? And let's figure out what the next action is to move forward.
That's amazing. Like, who wants to have regrets? Um, I and I love what you said about intention. I was recently at the beginning of last year in a leadership training, and they posed the question to me, when it comes to accomplishing something, what percentage of is necessary to do that? Intention versus action. And I don't remember what my percentage was, but it was divided. And then they explained to me it's 100% intention. And that struck me oddly at first, but as I started to think about it, it was like, if my intention is to get to my sick child and my car breaks down on the way, I don't throw my hands up in the air and, it's like, oh, well, I tried. Like, I figure it out. Now, those figuring it out is action, but it's all driven by that intention.
Well, in
So,
Proverbs, it says, without a vision, the people perish. So
yes.
vision is what drives it. So one of the things that we ask, we have a 5-step process we use. And the first one is state your vision. Organizing is of no value unless it's getting you somewhere. And if you know
Mm,
where you want, Simon Sinek's why, I mean, if you know the why of what you're organizing, it's an art. We say, paint a picture of why you're getting organized and we'll help you get there. I'll close with this story that I told. One time, I had a friend who always talked about her messy office. And one day she told me she was getting a new job. And I said, I want to gift you 4 hours of my time to organize your office so it'll be all ready for your new job. She didn't take me up on the offer. And later on, she said, oh, you'd just die if you saw my office. I said, okay, I don't have to see your office. I said, put your papers in boxes and bring them to my office. Now we do it virtually, but back then I didn't know how to do it virtually. And I said, put your papers in boxes, bring them to my office, and we'll do it. I said, and after 2 hours, she was just ecstatic. And I said, okay, so why did you wait so long to take up my offer? It wasn't costing you anything. She said, I've hired 3 organizers in 2 states and paid over $10,000. And at the end, I was worse off than in the beginning.
ah,
And I said, really? I said, so tell me, what's different about what we're doing from what you did then? And she said, 2 things. One is I never realized that my clutter papers were postponed decisions. So I just didn't think of that. And now I see it everywhere I go. And secondly, you didn't tell me what I should do. You asked me what I was willing to do. We get dropouts from Marie Kondo and David Allen. Both of them have programs that absolutely work. If you do what they tell you to do, it will work. But God created us all differently, and that's why we call it the art. So it's like there needs to be a system, but there needs to be flexibility within the system. So it's something that you will do. And if the vision is big enough, you will get there. And if you don't have a vision, starting to clear the clutter will help you find one.
I love it. I love it. So I got 2 more questions for you. Number 1, I'd like to know, um, at if you could go back and give your younger self any piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to ask for help from people who are farther along than you are. I had the advantage, and you mentioned Joe. I was around Joe's group for years, did not take advantage of it because I was so intimidated that
Uh,
the people around me were so much richer than I was. They had so much more access. And I know that they would have helped me if I would ask, but I was afraid to ask. So one of our principles now is asking is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom.
that's a really powerful, testimony there. I'm sure that there's lots of people listening that feel the same way, refusing to engage in a group because they don't think that, I don't know, what is that? Imposter syndrome? Lots of different things that could cause people to feel that, but very powerful. The second
But
thing
the
is
truth successful people actually, when you reach a certain level of success, the thing that you most wanna do is pass your success on to somebody else.
right, exactly. At this phase in my life, the reason I started this podcast was because I wanted to inspire people. I don't care about being a famous copywriter or any of that stuff, the stuff that I thought I was going to want to care about or that I was gonna care about when I was, 30. Um, it's like, how can I impact lives? How can I make people's lives better? How can I maybe help somebody avoid the kind of suffering that I went through with certain things?
Well,
Um,
I wanna give other people hope, and my license plate says "Hope Fool." And when people ask me why, I said, "Because I'm a fool for Jesus," and HOPE stands for help others pursue entrepreneurship, which I've done for 30 years now, and it also stands for help others pursue eternity, which in the end is all that matters.
yeah, that's great. So the last question, Barbara, is, um, you've got a lot of things, Shepherd's House Ministry. There's so many things we didn't talk about, but at this juncture in your life, who do you want to be a hero to? Is there any group, idea, concept that stands out to you?
Well, I that's a great question, and I think the answer to that is I mentioned at the beginning of our interview that the services that I've created through these years are very recognizable in residential and also with solopreneurs and small businesses. But I am so passionate that these being implemented in larger companies would make an enormous example. And I'll just give you one example that happened recently. What I found through the years, I've had clients who were leaders in large companies. Usually they're never told anybody because they were kind of embarrassed that they'd hired an organizing consultant and they didn't run out and tell her. In fact, I had one client who had me work from 6 to midnight. And whenever anybody came in, I was a friend.
Ah,
But I took my car to the dealership, for servicing, and they have this, snack bar there, and they've just done, hundreds of thousands of dollars of remodeling, and the guy in the snack bar is a retired executive who does it just to keep from getting bored, and I went up to talk to him, I said, "Hey, how do you like these new facilities?" And he looked at me and he said, "I wish they would have talked to me before they built it."
oh, wow.
And this facility, the snack bar, right, was like 5 times the size of what it needed to be, and it was lined with cupboards and drawers that were empty.
Hmm,
Clutter and real estate, I mean, square footage being taken up, and it's because leaders, I one of my taglines is great leaders create great cultures. A productive environment is a great culture, and I believe now that post COVID, one of the things that leaders are going to need to pay attention to is whether their employees are not only accomplishing their work, but also enjoy their lives. Because the younger generation, in order to take a job and to stay in a job, they're concerned about their quality of life more so
Right.
than previous generations are. So my hope is that I'm going to reach leaders of larger companies, not publicly held companies because they only care about stock prices, but privately held companies where the leaders really want their employees to not only accomplish their work, but enjoy their lives.
Wonderful. Barbara, where should people go to find out more about your services if they would like to get some of your wisdom and your help and your guidance?
They can just go to barbarahemphill.com and reach out to me. I do a 30-minute discovery session with anybody to point them in the right direction. And the other thing is there is a scorecard. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out. It's called productiveenvironmentscore.com, and it measures your productivity. I've looked at thousands of these through the years. And once you fill it out, you will get what we call an office blueprint, which is kind of a picture of how you organize office. And then you get an opportunity for a 30-minute consultation to help you customize that blueprint for your office, because having an organized office is going to impact your profitability, your productivity, and your peace of mind. And today's the day to change it. And we can get you started just with that conversation. We can get you started in the right direction. So go to productiveenvironmentscore.com.
That is amazing. And as somebody who's already acquainted with the the amazing transformation that your wisdom and systems have done in my life, I just want to encourage anyone listening to go check that out. I'll have everything linked below, no matter what platform you're listening this to or watching it on. All of those links will be below. Barbara Hemphill, thank you so much for spending your time with us today and all the wisdom you dropped. My gosh, so much gold. I am in awe of what you've done because of your trusting God and the leading that you've done in your life to change life. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Tony. I enjoyed the conversation, and I just hope that people gain some hope from our conversation.
I'm sure they absolutely will. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for tuning into Hero Up. I hope today's episode challenged you to step up as a hero in your field and provided you with valuable insights to express your unique voice and message. If you found this episode helpful and motivating, please leave a review and share it with your friends and family. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes and amazing guests. Until next time, find your voice, share your message, live your mission.